Hello and welcome to Unstress. My name is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Now, before I start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this podcast, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We have so much to learn from a culture that has survived 65,000 years, the longest surviving human culture in Earth's history. So, we have a lot to learn. Today, we are going to be exploring connection, kindness, loneliness, and what to do about it. Connection, as we know, as we learnt, particularly in the pandemic, as though we needed reminding of it, is a basic human needs. And the longest study in human well-being coming out of Harvard University, dating now 80 years, has identified that relationships are the key to predicting well-being, more predictive than any other variable. And loneliness, depression, anxiety, suicide, unfortunately, are skyrocketing. And research has shown that loneliness can be as harmful as 15 cigarettes or 6 alcoholic drinks per day. So there is a huge need out there, and so many volunteering organisations are trying to fulfil that need. But sadly, volunteering rates have been and are plummeting since 2010. Well, my guest today is dedicated to do something about that. My guest is Chris Ingate. Chris is the co-founder of One Another, an online digital platform that connects people who want to express kindness and help other people with charities who need people who want to express kindness and help other people. And that want and need are huge. And One Another is a great idea, I believe, worth supporting, giving humans the power to unleash kindness in a way that suits them. So it really is almost like a dating app for those that want to do something good and those that need those people who are wanting to do that. I hope you enjoy this conversation I had with Chris Ingate. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Ron. Glad to be here.
Chris, One Another. I'm intrigued by the organisation. When I saw it, it seemed to be addressing an important need. I wondered if you might just tell us a little bit about One Another and how it works.
Sure. So for those listening, I'll just say what it is so you can get an understanding of how to use it. It's a kindness marketplace. So what that means is there's people on one side who are volunteers who want to offer their help. And on the other side, we have individuals who need help or charities that are looking for volunteers. We connect the two to ideally connect the world over kindness to increase happiness, because all humans on this planet know that if you do good, you feel good mentally. So that is our plan.
Yeah. Now, kindness, it also addressing, loneliness is a big issue. I think the pandemic kind of highlighted, and in fact, I remember hearing a statistic that the loneliness is worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, in terms of its health. It's a big problem. Is that another one of the focuses?
Correct. So that's one of the pillars that we're looking to address. Loneliness is costing the Australian health economy about $2.8 billion a year in these challenges, and about 50% of Australians. So that's 1 every 2 of your friends, your work colleagues, your family members experience this concept of feeling lonely at least once a week, which is crazy, because there's still very much a big stigma around feeling lonely, and this concept that it's okay to reach out and talk about your mental health, and it's okay to not be okay. But I want to take this opportunity for anyone that is listening is, from our point of view, there is nothing wrong with loneliness. Whilst it is a challenge, it is just our body and our minds reminding us that we need human connection. So, perfect example, Ron, what do we do when we're thirsty?
Sure. We drink.
Right? What do we do when we're hungry?
We eat.
Exactly. So what do we do when we're lonely? It is just our body reminding us that we need other human connection, because human connection is a basic need of life. And unfortunately, we are becoming more and more disconnected than ever.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I know you take this into the workplace, and I'm intrigued to know, how you incorporate this into a workplace, because we are on our podcast really focusing a lot now on workplace well-being. And tell us a bit about how you would approach this within the workplace.
Yeah, so we have pivoted into the corporate volunteering space, and about 80% of corporates within Australia offer their staff, as part of their employee contract, anywhere between 1 and 5 annual volunteering days, which is a great thing, But unfortunately,
that is a great thing. And I don't know that many people are aware of that. That's a really important point to remind or educate our listener about. Go on. Yeah, that's interesting.
Correct, but it's there. Corporates are just ticking in the box and it's in the employment contract, but under 10% of days are actually utilized. So we have this huge pool of kindness hours that corporates are essentially willing to pay for that are not being utilized. Why? Again, too difficult, too manual, too human, labor intensive. The typical process is you go and find a charity, you reach out based on an email or a phone call, you bring it back to the organization to get it approved, you invite your colleagues, you get your manager's approval to take next Wednesday 4 till 6 p.m. off work. It's all very manual. I heard a great quote today from a colleague I was speaking to that was, what was it? It was the process, so the manual process is preventing progress, which is exactly the case in this corporate volunteering space, which is where we want to use technology to automate that process. So then as a few click of a button, we enable and we encourage our customers and our corporates to achieve 100% of volunteering utilization across their organization.
So it's basically doing the hack work that, if they had an HR, and a lot of companies don't have HR departments or human resources, or I think it's called people and culture nowadays, but you guys are doing that for them, sort of connecting the potential with the customer.
Correct.
Or the need.
Correct. We're trying to use technology to remove every single roadblock that prevents a volunteering event. Let's talk through what that typically is. Have you done much volunteering in your time?
Not as much as I should, and not as much as I will. That's why I'm interested in what you're doing.
Yeah. It's funny. There's a big disconnect between intention and action that we see.
Yes.
You ask a lot of your friends, your colleagues, hey mate, do you understand the power and the benefits of volunteering? 95% of volunteers understand that if you do good, you feel good and it boosts your happiness. So typically you hear yes. So then it goes, would you volunteer? And goes, of course. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I want to help my community and better my mental health? And then the question is, well, why don't you? And then you hear, I'm too busy. Yes, typically I'm too time poor. I don't know where to look. Or a very common one is I have actively reached out to many charities and they haven't got back to me, which is no fault of the charity because they are typically under-resourced or run by volunteers and, they have a lot of applications. I don't know how to do my police background check. I don't know where to do my working with children check. All of these roadblocks, right? We deem and we believe that tech used for good can remove all of these roadblocks. And this is where we at one another are trying to create this on-demand acts of kindness or this on-demand volunteering platform where the story and the member workflow now goes, you log on, create a profile similar to Airtasker, if you've ever used Airtasker. I then search, hey, I live in Campbelltown. Next Friday at 3 p.m., I like animals because I've just lost my dog and I really want another dog in my life. what's available in my area. A list pops up, you apply, you get approved, you invite your friends, you add it to your calendar, you go and do it. How much more of an easier workflow with the help of technology is that than the old manual process? So that's what we're trying to fix.
Fantastic. I mean, I love this idea. And let's, if I were, well, I think you may have just described what the individual, let's look at the individual and let's then say, okay, I'm a business that has got all this untapped resource. How do we go about doing it? Let's start with the individual. So I think you just kind of went through really what an individual would do.
Yeah. So
go on.
Yeah. So the individual is that workflow. It's on demand. One of our taglines is unleashing kindness in a way that suits you. So how do we sort of create this matching, similar to sort of dating apps? The more we know of your profile, the more relevant and the more skillful we can become at providing you with relevant opportunities. So, your profile is typically your location, your availability, your values, your interests, your skills, your certificates that you have, your tools, your languages that you speak. The more and more we know about you, which you can do by creating your profile, and it's completely safe and trusted and up to you about how much, how strong you want to make your profile. And then we can match you with relevant events. Hey, we see you're a social media manager that is using Canva and can speak Spanish. Well, there's actually a Spanish charity who's just launched in Australia who needs help getting their message out in both Spain and English. Boom, perfect match, help with each other. So that's sort of where we want to create that on-demand relevant piece for the individual member.
And for the company or the charity or the individual, I'm guessing, as well, who has the need for help, it's the same thing in reverse, basically.
Yeah. So for a charity, all charities, typically we are working with your mum and pop sort of smaller charity organizations, the big 5 or the big 10 who typically dominate the charity awareness, Oz Harvest, Blood Bank, Salvation Army. They don't need help finding more volunteers. They've got that element nailed. But there's about 60,000 charity organisations across Australia, and about 86% of them all could use more volunteer work. You think about what goes in the back end of a charity. There's communicating your message. There's your website and your analytics. There's actually delivering events, or there's updating social media. As you would know, there are so many elements to running a business. You try to do that with a handful of humans, it becomes a lot more difficult. So we make it easy for a charity to create their profile, log in and create an event of what they need help with. So that could be a one-off, it could be an ongoing project, it could be in person, it could be virtual, whatever it is, they create it. And then ultimately, the stronger our marketplace grows, we then send push notifications to volunteers who meet those criteria, because if you get alerted of a very specific relevant thing, again, the higher chances of you converting. So we make it easy for charities to find and onboard new volunteers.
And did I hear you right that there are 60,000 registered charities?
Correct. Across Australia.
That is extraordinary. I had no idea there were, although when I think about it, I know that I was president of the Australasian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine. It's a registered charity. I think it is, because that's tax-deductible donations, I guess, come under that category, do they not, I suppose?
Yeah.
What about for businesses wanting to unleash their potential kindness, brownie points for kindness?
Yeah.
How does a business go, yeah, look, I love this idea, let's get going with this?
Yeah, and I love it. You said unleash kindness, and that's exactly what we're all about. So the main value proposition we're delivering corporates is essentially ensuring that they reach 100% of the employee volunteering days that they are offering. How do you do that? You can't rely on human manual processes. So our tech is a software as a service, and we are a subscription model. And essentially, we are automating the process that's involved with helping employees find, match, and deliver relevant volunteering events that suit them. But ultimately, the biggest value proposition is the measurement and reporting piece we offer the heads of HR or the company leadership team, because now they can actually easily, in a dashboard, measure the community volunteering impact they have as a company, which one, they can help promote that across all of their stakeholders, employees, investors, customers. Two, they can actually help use that information and those insights to help strategize and dictate future CSR programs or future mental health employee benefit programs. For example,
CSR, Chris, CSR?
That stands for corporate social responsibility. So,
okay, good.
Ultimately, a company or head of HR or the leadership team can say, hey, last year, 80% of our staff engaged with environmentally focused charities. Well, ipso facto, environment is obviously an important value of our staff. So maybe it would make sense to have environment as one of our corporate values or as part of our social responsibility programs. So let's partner with more environmental organizations, or let's donate to more organizations, or let's bring in more environmentally focused thought leadership webinars. Essentially, you'll be able to actually understand what your staff are engaging with so you can make your responsible programs more relevant to them as well.
There's two sides to this. One is the person giving and the other is the person getting the help. And you mentioned police checks that are obviously important because you're taking on quite a responsibility here, aren't you, in connecting people. Tell us about some of those checks and balances that work both ways.
Yeah. Again, for all those listening who have tried, I've obviously gone through the process myself. Typically, you have to get, 100 points of verification. You then have to go into a New South Wales service. I can't even remember what they're called. Service the government where you get your license from.
Yep.
Mind blank.
Service New South Wales.
Yeah.
In New South Wales, it's called Service New South Wales.
There you go.
In every state, I'm sure there would be that. A government service provider.
Correct. Yeah, you have to book.
Yep.
You have to book your appointment, which typically, is a couple of weeks in advance. You go in, you wait in line, and it's a few hours. It's a manual nightmare of a process. We have AI. We're sending people to the moon. We're sending people to Mars. You're telling me that is the easiest, best way to do a police background check? I don't think so. So we're currently in conversations with the governments about ways we can improve that process, and making sure it is still safe and you're still proving and verifying yourself with the necessary licenses and reference checks. But let's use technology to do the heavy lifting. So that's where we want to automate it. And the more certificates, there's food and culinary certificates. So to prove that you're a safe handler if you're working at a food charity, for example. Obviously your driver's license is needed if you're driving, the elderly in a minivan to certain events. Ultimately, we want to make as many certificates or as many verification checks as automated and as easy as possible. More people, more verified, more higher the chance of connecting a relevant volunteer with a relevant event.
And what about the organisations themselves? 60,000 charities. How does one do a check on that? Like a police check, if you like.
Yeah, so the ACNC, which is the Australian Commission something for Charities, they all have ACNC verified numbers. So in our back end, when a charity applies to our program, we double check that they are a verified approved charity based on the work that the Australian government do. And ultimately that tells us that they're a verified approved charity because the Australian government does all of those verification checks. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're obviously trusting what the government, the work they do in approving those charities in the first place.
Wow, Chris, it's certainly an exciting initiative. I mean, I think dating apps have fulfilled a very important social function in this day and age, and this is a dating app for kindness, really, isn't it?
Correct. And that was actually one of our sort of initial ideas early on, which we may end up pivoting into as well. I was listening to this podcast yesterday, or a few days ago, essentially that dating apps on the internet is the new normal way of meeting people. But what do the typical dating apps do? They're based off photos, they're based off cheesy one-liners, and they're based off just, one or two sentences. How are you supposed to sort of, in my personal opinion, I know there's a lot of people listening, who have found their true partners and their love of dating apps, so congratulations.
Yes,
but for me, how are you supposed to know how you are aligned with someone, based off a photo and a one sentence? But back to our initial sort of potential idea was you date, and the only way you can meet each other is if you go and complete a volunteering event together. So one of the profiles is, hey, I like volunteering, animals, homelessness, mental health. And then it puts up a relevant volunteering opportunity, which is both based on your availability. And then you go and date and get to know each other over a group volunteering session, which I think would be a very, very cool way to meet your future partner. The first time you met was over a shared value and a shared purpose of volunteering. What a positive mindset you're in if you're both doing that as your first date, let's call it.
Yeah. Yes. And can you give us an example of you having gone into a company, for example, and they've embraced the program, and what have they done with it?
Yeah. So last week
you don't have to mention specific names, Chris. We'll keep the names, protect the the anonymity.
No, more than happy to. These charities, that's why they're working with us, is to increase their awareness and to engage more volunteers. So last Sunday or the Sunday before one another, we organised a group of about 12 individuals to go into a wonderful charity organisation called Our Big Kitchen. They are based out of Bondi, and they essentially cook and prepare food and meals for vulnerable people in need. They do about over 1,000 meals a week, and they distribute that to all of their different charity partners and essentially get meals into people who need them. And these range from folks dealing with homelessness who don't have a place to call home, who are living in the streets, who are living in their cars, and they get hot meals and well-cooked meals delivered to them. That's a game changer. A lot of women dealing with domestic violence, and who, again, food is on the low priority list. So they do absolutely amazing work, and they deliver all over New South Wales. They take in individual volunteers or group or corporate volunteers, and they essentially gamify it, sort of like a cook-off. We split up into teams of 6 with secret ingredients, and we had to prepare a meal. We provided 100 meals per each team, and then one of the Our Big Kitchen staff just rates our meals and dictates who's the winner. But we love the work they do. Another amazing charity we partner with is a program called Connected AU. They have an Australian-wide traditional pen pal writing program where you as an individual write letters to Australians or folks across Australia who are experiencing isolation and loneliness. And one of the sessions, we did a breath work and a meditation session beforehand, which essentially gave the opportunity for everyone to be grounded and to release from their worries. And then we went into about a half an hour of writing these letters. And about of the 15 people we did it, we had 3 people who ended up bursting out in tears, in joyful tears and happy tears, but just they couldn't remember the last time they sat distracted free, no phones, no technology, and just wrote out their feelings on paper. A traditional handwritten note is just an amazing way to communicate. So they do fabulous things. And, they're just 2 examples. We're charity agnostic. We work with about 60 different charities across Australia. Relove is one who distribute furniture and create homes for people in need based out of Botany. They are fantastic. Thread together, redistribute brand new clothing. So all retailers in Australia know that they sell 1/3 of their product full price, 1/3 of their product discounted price, and 1/3 of their brand new products go directly into landfill, which is crazy. 1/3
Oh my God.
of all brand, and these are brand new items
Wow.
with price tags still on them. So Thread Together act as that middleman, stop those brand new clothes going to landfill and just redistribute them. But yeah, there are a couple of examples for people listening. If you're another charity, please feel free to reach out. We'd be more than happy to work with you to help you find more volunteers, because our entire goal is to help all of those 60,000 charities find more volunteers so they can increase their social impact, do what they do more frequently. More charities doing better things, better world in all their different categories.
And can you give us an example, and I'm happy if you mention their names, because of the companies that have given it a go and what they did?
Yeah, so the corporate platform is we are offering that and launching that in Q1. So that's not ready just yet, but we're in great conversations with some innovative corporates like Nova, obviously Nova 969, the radio station. They are potentially going to be one of our leading legacy early adopting partners. ClickView, which is the educational tech, they are part of it. Yotpo, which is the e-commerce tech brand. JC2Co, which is the global outdoor advertising company. ATG Construction, which is a construction group. This just proves that we are industry agnostic. And again, human kindness and human volunteering does not discriminate. Every single human on this planet, every single community, every single earliest written Bible or written testament has this concept of community, connection, and kindness in it. So we're not doing anything new. We are just doing what's existed since the dawn of time when humans became to start living in tribes. We're just doing it better and automating it so more people can do it, so it's more accessible. We're just trying to do what exists, today, but 1,000 times better.
Well, this episode will actually be coming out in Q1, 2024. So, this is an enterprise that I think is just so cool, Chris. I love the idea of it, and I love the sentiment of it. And as you say, kindness and compassion are contagious. They're good for the person, good for doing it, good for the people receiving it. And research actually tells us it's good for people observing it as well. So it's a total win-win-win. We will, of course, have links to your website, and we'll encourage the workplace to get behind it and charities to register for it, and most important, people to give of their time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ron. It's a pleasure.
Well, I think it's just such a great initiative. And when I heard about it, I really wanted to support it and make you aware of it as well. So many organizations. I was surprised to hear that in many employment contracts, and it may be in your own employment contract, it may be worth going and reading the fine print, that written into those employment contracts are the ability for you to donate your time for between 1 and maybe 5 days and be paid for it by your own employer. And that's a huge resource that is clearly being underutilized. And so many companies, particularly small companies in Australia, do not have the bandwidth. Many don't have HR, or I think it's called culture and people now. They don't even have an HR person on their team. So organising and connecting with charities that need it. And how about that? 60,000 charities registered in Australia. I was blown away by that too. So there is a great resource within work contracts. There is a great desire. I mean, companies are recognising that there is a social need to contribute to society. And I applaud businesses. I think the workplace is where some great things are going to happen in this in the future. Well-being in the workplace, terrific. Social enterprise in the workplace, terrific. Environmental responsibility, well, that's a subject we'll explore in another podcast. But social impact is something that a lot of companies and a lot of people feel passionate about, but just can't connect with people easily in a timely way. And that's what One Another is about. And we will, of course, have links to that in our show notes. But it's simply oneanother.io. oneanother.io. So it doesn't get much simpler than that. I hope this finds you well. Until next time, this is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Be well. This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health, and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express their own opinions, experiences, and conclusions.